everyone, my name is Matthew Kelly and welcome to episode number 8 of the Social Q&A show. Thank you so much for joining me today to talk about a very, very interesting topic. Today's topic is how do you craft a social media strategy for a brand? Okay, and it's an interesting topic because I've actually got some pretty unorthodox views on the right way to craft a social media strategy and why I believe in being lean and iterative rather than developing that one big campaign. So we'll talk about all that in just a moment. But before we do, I wanted to say thank you so much to everyone who's found us through iTunes. We're still very, very fortunate to be featured in Apple's new and noteworthy section in Australia, the USA. I believe in Canada we're featured in certain areas. So thank you so much to everyone who's viewed, downloaded, subscribed, written a review for us. All of those things are hugely valuable. If you are watching this episode right now and you're enjoying it so far, I know I have said nothing yet, but I promise you the content will be good. I assure you of that. If you like it, please, feel free to subscribe and definitely write a review. Hopefully a positive one if you're into it. It just helps us go a long way in getting high up the rankings and starting a brand new show. It always helps. So I massively appreciate everything that you guys have done for us so far. You've really helped me to hit number 10 in the business charts under management marketing in Australia. That's huge for us. So thank you very, very much. If you found us through iTunes, as always, feel free to leave comments below the video, subscribe to the YouTube channel. That's all cool too. Now, let's get straight onto the topic because this is one that's very important. It's very strategic. We're talking about strategy here. Every business that we've interacted with as an agency actually struggle in this area. It's around developing a social media strategy. And let's talk about traditional marketing and traditional marketing agencies. What agencies used to do when they were developing a campaign for, TV commercials or a rollout on, maybe it's direct mail or maybe it's billboards and all of the real world display advertising. A company would go to an agency. The agency would say, okay, cool, we've got the brief, we understand. Now we're going to take that away, and what we're going to do is we're going to develop the strategy. And they might spend a month or 2 months or 3 months or 6 months developing a strategy, right? And then there would be a go live date, and that's when it would all go bang and it would go live. And for a period of time, that's how these strategies were developed. And it made sense because, it's expensive to run TV ads. You've got to develop the creative. You've got to go through that whole process. It's not a simple overnight delivery. It's hard to do a test and learn validation cycle. So, and that's how people have sort of started to do social in many ways, right? If you go to a big agency, that's the way they do it. The strategy's got to be developed, and it does, right? All of the research has to go into it, and it does. There's a huge rationale for why these things are important. Now, I've come into building a social agency after having a startup background, after working in this technology sector in Silicon Valley, where I worked within a very, very influential and well-known personal incubator or an idea lab where we built startup products. And we lived and died by the lean startup validation cycle, right? It was the build, measure, learn cycle. So the whole idea there is that and this was core to the business. It was, we build things, we measure results of what we build, we learn as a result of the measurements, and we put those back into the build cycle. So it was always, there was always a feedback loop on everything that we did. We didn't just go and build a whole lot of things, go live and go, cool, it's done, right? That doesn't work. Now, what works hand in hand with the build, measure, learn cycle is what we also call the MVP, the minimum viable product. Now, what that means is, if you're building a tech startup, and you know that you want to build this big, elaborate mobile app that solves this big, elaborate problem, it's very easy to spend a lot of money to get to the point of that app being live. So again, talk about traditional business. What would happen is I've got an idea, I go to a web developer, or I go to an app developer, or I go to an agency, I go to someone who can help me build this product. I might outsource it, right? I'm going to say, I need this thing built. Here's the scope of the work. Here's the wireframes, here's how it'll look. Here's all of the different menu items, or here's how they'll interact with each other, whatever those things are. I need you to build it. And you would spend money, and they would take time to build that product for you. And you'd go live, and you'd go, it's done, it's live, it's finished. Now, the problem with that is if you've missed the product market fit, if you don't serve a core need, there's all these things that can go wrong in that process, and you've just sunk a lot of time, a lot of effort, a lot of money into building something that people don't want. Okay, so traditional marketing had that problem. Okay, traditional web development, app development, mobile, any type of development had that problem. So now I'm sitting here and I'm like, this is interesting because we've seen these two totally different approaches go live. One was building tangible assets, one was building a marketing, communications, campaign strategy, and they've both gone through these processes of the big, stable approach of research, strategy, go live, date. The minimum viable product says what's the minimum amount required that I have to build to validate a hypothesis. So the hypothesis might be, if I'm adding value to my customer or to my community or to my client, I will provide this service to them. Okay, that's cool. The question is, do they value that service, right? No, you can validate that by asking them. You can also validate it by developing a minimum viable product. So what can I build to get them to say, yes, I need that, or yes, I want to buy that product, or yes, I want to do that, without building any of the back end, without building anything beyond them saying, yes, I need it. Because if you can do that, then you go, cool, I've achieved product market fit. I know people need this product. I know they want this product. I now can go into a build phase with more certainty. Let's actually get it live. Let's build it. Let's do the go the long yards, right? And all the way along, build, measure, learn. So every time we build something and we're able to take it to market, let's test it, let's get data, let's learn from data, let's put that back into the feedback loop. That's the MVP process. So when we were building the social agency, what we said was, right, we understand the MVP phase. We understand this cycle of taking the data and embedding it back into the strategy. All of that makes sense. And we've also now sort of taken this concept of the minimum viable product. So when we build out a marketing strategy using social media, we don't start by saying we need to go away and we need to spend a couple of months mapping out a big campaign for social and it's going to be this one big bang and it's all going to explode, it's going to be awesome. Because it's so hard to get that right, frankly, unless you know a brand inside out, a customer inside out, you know exactly what they want to hear from you, and it is the hard part, you understand the intricacies of the different social platforms. If you don't know all of those things and you haven't packaged it up perfectly, when you do go live with that big elaborate campaign, you're going to miss the mark. So what I'm a big fan of, and this is why social is so powerful for us, is that I'll come to market with an iterative strategy. So we'll say, okay, we need to, so as an example, I'm talking to you as my client. Okay, we need to understand your customer. Let's sit down, let's map out your customer, your ideal customer, your current customers. Let's talk about what your customers love about you. Let's talk about what they hate about you. Okay, now we start to understand your value proposition, right? Now, once we've got that down, we can go, okay, we've now formed some hypothesis around what we think will resonate with your customers. Let's validate them. And let's not validate them over 6 months. Let's not try and go for the big splash and go and spend a lot of time taking this even further, going even deeper. Let's start to develop some micro content now and use social to put that message in front of those people and see what resonates. So it's build the assets, but we're not building 7 months of assets, we're building 3 weeks of assets or 2 weeks of assets, and let's start to put them in front of people. We might use paid advertising to start to drive traffic to them based on targeted relevant traffic, and let's see what resonates. Let's see what they engage with. Let's see what they care about. Because if we can test that in sort of micro batches, rather than going for this one big all-encompassing hurrah, then we're going to learn so much more. And what I like to do is actually come to a client with, here are the 10 different types of content types. So it might all be visual assets for Facebook because we hypothesize, right? We know that's where your customers are, you've had current success there, whatever it is. We'll go, okay, here's the different content types. Some might be funny memes about your brand, who knows, right? Some might be a very structured approach to, if you're a restaurant, we might provide recipes on how the chef creates a certain type of product, right? It could be anything, but we would create all of these different iterations of content and then test them with the market using targeted traffic. After a period of time, you really start to learn what resonates and what doesn't. And that really empowers a social strategy because then you're able to say, I know what people actually care about, or I know what's actually meaningful to my audience. If you haven't done that, if you haven't gone through those cycles, then really you're just taking one big guess. And frankly, I'm not a fan of the one big guess because who knows if we're right? You only know if we're right after it's all said and done. And if you've burned a lot of money or a lot of time or a lot of effort, it doesn't make sense. Now, if you're sitting there and you're like, this is great, Matt, but I'm not a corporate and I don't have big budgets, I don't work with agencies, this approach applies 100% to you. 100%. You might be a hobby, right? You might enjoy paper airplanes and you might say, I want to build a community of people who are into paper airplanes. Okay, so you make an Instagram account because it's an easy one to get reach on. You start hashtagging like crazy. You're finding people who are posting photos about paper airplanes and hashtagging or writing messages on them. So then you're starting to engage with them on their content, writing comments, asking questions, going deeper in the dialogue with those people. Now, you might be sitting there thinking to yourself, what do people want? How can we serve this market? How can we capture attention and build a community around paper airplanes? And you might be thinking in the back of your head, well, I think if we take photos of a sheet of paper with all the dotted lines on them, right, someone can put the phone next to their piece of paper and they know where to fold. And you almost, one content piece might be, this is how you create this type of paper airplane. But you know what? Another one might be, here's the completed plane and here's a video of it flying. Or it might be, here's a hyperlapse video, a sped up video of me folding up the paper airplane. Right, so you can see the process I go through to fold it up. There's multiple different types of content that could work here, and the truth is all of them might resonate, but my guess is some will resonate with different audiences more than others, and that's why this testing cycle is so valuable. Be willing to be lean and iterative rather than going for the one big approach. There's so many people that say we're not ready to do social yet because we've got to develop the big strategy or the big campaign or the big whatever it is, and almost every time the feedback immediately back is that's fine, and you can do that. You can always do that. But the likelihood of success is significantly lower than if you do some micro tests. Don't go too expensive, don't go too deep, don't go too crazy in your testing cycles. Just make sure you're getting different messages to the same audience so you can see what resonates with those people. That's my take on developing a structured approach to building an iterative social strategy. So there's a bit of craziness to you, a structured approach to an iterative strategy. But I think if you go into it with that mindset, the risk isn't high. And that's important to think about, is risk. Because that's the other thing people get really stressed about is, well, what if I get negative comments or people hate it or it doesn't work or I get no reach, or worse, I get bad reach and I reach the wrong audience. That's almost never an issue, right? And if it is an issue, then it's a learning experience for you, especially if you're starting fresh from nothing, because frankly, you can always start again. And I know I'm talking to a lot of social media marketers here, and this is a big thing, is the risk. But the truth is, I don't really believe that the risk is high here. I don't believe it's going to be a big problem. I don't believe you're going to really miss the mark completely and really stress people out or scare them. And I think that's an important thing to realize, is it's not all or nothing, right? You can't, worst case scenario, you can always delete the page, you can always start again, you can always go off-brand and test different strategy with different audiences first. So that's my take on the structured, lean, iterative social cycle. If you like this, please, as I said, hit subscribe. It really helps us out. Feel free to add reviews, add comments, tell us what you think, because that all goes right back into us making this show better, more valuable, and more interesting for all of you. That was episode 8. Thanks so much for sticking with me. This is Matthew Kelly, and I will see you all very soon.